Welcome back to Zelda Week. We have actually reached the third week at this point, and no sign of a Nintendo Direct, meaning it seems a lot more likely that we'll get that at some point in February. So, I'm gonna refrain from Nintendo stuff for these upcoming 2 weeks, probably, just to see if they say anything, because given the fact that there's just so many anniversaries going on this year, including Zelda's, I have no doubt in my mind that they're going to announce something absolutely insane for Zelda, and we're going to have to focus on that. Like, we'll have a whole week dedicated to like direct announced stuff, right? But aside from that, obviously one of the things we are waiting on is, just some form of news or updates in regards to the next mainline Zelda. However, like I said in one of my earlier videos this week, I don't see a viable timeline in which we receive anything in terms of like a major mainline Zelda title this year, because we received so many games for Zelda within the last 3 years alone, right? With Tears of the Kingdom in 23, Echoes of Wisdom in 24, and Age of Imprisonment in 25. So we've had our 3D Zelda, our 2D Zelda, and our spin-off Zelda. So it's just like, unless they've had like another team working crazy silent, or like just on just insane timing, like if they had maybe had like another batch of Monolith like going crazy on it, like I highly doubt we're seeing another mainline Zelda for a good minute. Also, sorry if you heard that, like, that hit. I hit my iPad by accident. My fault, gang. My fault. But I need it from a script. We're not going to see anything anytime soon. Probably. I mean, granted, I'd hope to be wrong. But if there's anybody that's not going to put their team on crunch, it's Nintendo for Mario, for Zelda, for any of their IPs. They are not going to do that, right? Except maybe Metroid, but that's not even their fault. I don't know whose fault that is. That's an entirely different situation. Point is, when it comes to Zelda, they're not gonna rush that. They're gonna take their time with that. It doesn't matter if this is the 40th anniversary, right? Maybe they could have planned a couple of things better here. I don't know, but long and short of it is, it was taking way too long to obtain Tears of the Kingdom as it was. So there was no way they could hold that off for another like 3 years. Could you imagine? That would be ridiculous. Right? I mean, granted, it is very possible that, it's such a weird situation with that, right? But regardless, we have a couple ideas, I think, or at least I have a couple ideas of what I expect. I'm not going to say, I say we, or like what you should, but these are my expectations for the next mainline Zelda title, right? And I'll explain my reasons as to why. First things first, like plenty of you, anybody could have made this shot in the dark and hit bullseye, probably, but I 100% expect the open air and open world format from now on, right? Because even in 2D Zelda, that was a semi-open world, right? In Echoes of Wisdom. If they're doing that for 2D Zelda, oh hell yeah, we're getting 3D Zelda, open air, open world format from now on, right? And I think they said that. I could be wrong, maybe I misheard it somewhere, but I do recall somebody mentioning that, like in an interview, they did mention that, the open world and open air format is just too good to let go, and it gave them so many ideas for like what to do next or in the future. So they're probably gonna be running with this style or this format for the next major Zelda. And honestly, I'm totally fine with that, because I don't know. It's a hard situation, right? Because I mean, in one way or another, like a lot of the Zelda games kind of had like a semi like open zone, open world format, right? When you really think about it. Okay, it was smaller, granted, it was always much smaller. And there were obviously a lot more loading times in between things, but for the most part, sailing the open seas in Wind Waker, or like, Twilight Princess's Hyrule, you never, especially when you're playing as a kid, you didn't feel restricted like that. Like, you never really even thought about the fact that those weren't technically open world games. They may as well have been open world games. I would have called it an open world game back in whenever I played Wind Waker, you know what I'm saying? So it's like, regardless, the style has always fit, and now it's damn near, not perfected per se, but close to, for this style. Right? And I think that's perfectly fine. I think it makes the most sense to continue with the open world and open zone or open world format like this, right? Going from place to place, city to city, town to town, village to village, and just getting to know the people, the places, the history of whatever version of Hyrule we're exploring, or not Hyrule, you know? Maybe we'll be out of Hyrule. Well, actually, that's kind of leading into my next point, which is simply the fact that we are either going to be in a very different version of Hyrule, or it's not going to be Hyrule at all, right? My thing is, I think everybody can agree, because I just thought about this like a little bit ago before I got back to working on this, but I think everybody's biggest problem, even outside of like how the story was handled for like Breath of the Wild and Tears of the Kingdom, is simply the fact that we spent way too long in this same Hyrule. Across 4 different games, we were burnt out. We've been on this Hyrule for a decade, right? And as much as I love this rendition of Hyrule, as much as I love this world, you know, I would have loved to see, you know, different situations involved in it that made it so that we were, like, it almost felt like it wasn't Hyrule. You know what I'm saying? That's why we wanted to see some real dungeons. We wanted to, you know, get out there and use our powers and abilities and, you know, the uniqueness of this format somewhere else outside of Hyrule. You know what I'm saying? We were kind of looking for a Majora's Mask situation with Tears of the Kingdom. We were kind of hoping, but I mean, granted, we knew frame 1 Tears of the Kingdom was going to be, you know, the Hyrule Kingdom. It only made sense, but I feel like they know better at this point in time, and I don't think we're going to come back to Hyrule. I think it would be really dumb on their part for at least one game to not leave Hyrule for a minute, because we're so burnt on the same kingdom over and over and over again this time around. I mean, granted, like I said, it could be a very different take on Hyrule. I think it was Zeltic, he made a video on the possibility of, the very real possibility of a sci-fi based Zelda, which honestly I'm cool with, because one thing I remember, it was a long time ago, I was working on like a, well, you know, I was a kid, I was working on a little fan fiction, and I was really ecstatic for whatever reason about the concept of a like steampunk style Zelda, like more steampunky, you know what I'm saying, like closer to modern as opposed to fantasy, but like a good blend of it, you know, like we still had the elven situation and of course all of the different races and stuff like that, but you know, we were living in a more modern society, but you know, maybe not like our type modern, but like steampunk, you know what I'm saying? I could definitely have seen something like that. I thought that would have been really, really cool. You know what I'm saying? Like a Link that grew up in the slums or something like that, you know, and he stumbles across the Master Sword that way, or some other form of magic, you know what I'm saying? That would like really shake things up for that realm. And I think that would be really, really neat to experience. But regardless of that, I think their best interest, it would be in their best interest to take us out of Hyrule just for a bit, right? And if it is going to take place in Hyrule, it's got to be a very different type of Hyrule. I mean, granted, that's the most likely scenario, is that it's going to be Hyrule. It's just not going to be one that we've ever seen before. It's going to be extremely different and hopefully really, really fun to explore, because, again, we were extremely burnt out going through this exact same Hyrule 4 different times. Across 4 different games, we were fed up. You know what I'm saying? You know, I just watched a video, I think it was Scott the Waz. He was just saying how, like, you know, he was so tired. He already explored everything so many times. So by the time we got to Age of Imprisonment, he just did not care. Like, I can't really blame him. You know, I liked Age of Imprisonment. It definitely had its flaws, but I think one of its biggest flaws is just the fact that it's coming hot off the heels of Tears of the Kingdom, which is our 3rd time exploring this version of Hyrule, or just being in this rendition of Hyrule. It's so old. You know what I'm saying? Like, you can only utilize it so many times before it's like, all right, can we get a fresh take, please? So yeah, I'm expecting a very different Hyrule in the next title. Next up, I think we're gonna probably get more dedicated detail to dungeons going forward, right? And the primary reason I believe that is because they kind of got a better grasp on how they wanted to do dungeons in Tears of the Kingdom. You could tell, even if the execution wasn't perfect, you could tell, like, after Breath of the Wild, they said, okay, like, this is cool, you know, this was a neat idea in theory, and it worked for the plot that we were working with, but, you know, we got to get a little bit more creative with the dungeons and actually make something, you know, closer to what we're, closer to the Zelda format, but with this new style, with this open air, open zone format. Or why do I keep saying open zone? Open world format. And, get as creative as we can with that, which is why, we saw situations like the Thunder Temple with Riju. That was really cool. That's one of the best things they came up with in that game, by and far. The other dungeons definitely could have used some work, but for the most part, you could see the effort. You could see that they tried to do something unique with that. And so, because of that, I think they were taking, despite taking what felt like a couple steps back in a couple of aspects, they definitely took some steps forward in terms of what kind of direction they wanted to take when it came to dungeon design. And so I'm really looking forward to whatever they come up with in future titles, because we could be looking at like a semi-return to form with a blend of the new stuff that we've been introduced to, where we do have our modern version of Link, or like whatever we happen to get with Link next, but we're also facing a situation in which we're actually like actively going after keys and stuff like that again. We're utilizing that for whatever like mini dungeons we have, or we can have like massive dungeons again, and we're using creative ways to solve the different puzzles within those actual dedicated massive dungeons like we're used to. You know what I'm saying? We could get actual water temples again, fire temples again, and things like that, So regardless, I do think they probably have a better idea of how they want to tackle dungeon design, and I think that's going to show. And maybe I'm too hopeful on that one, but I don't think I'm crazy to believe that. Okay, because I did see some effort in Tears of the Kingdom. I'm sure you guys did too. Everybody that played it, for the most part, generally had a good time, but they started to notice its cracks after a little while. But I think we have a direction now, and I'm looking forward to that. Next up is, this one's kind of out of the blue, probably, but I'm still going to say it anyway. Link being his own character from now on, right? I mean, granted, that's been a thing for a good while now. I mean, ever since the beginning of the era of the Wild, essentially. Like, that was the first time, I believe, in Zelda history that we did not name Link ourselves. I could have sworn there was an interview with Aonuma somewhere that said that he basically saw Link as his own character now, and there's really no point in letting the players name them, and also, or name him. And, that's why, when they did the voice acting situation, they're like, what, screw it. This is Link. This has always been Link, There's genuinely no point in going out of our way to make it so that the player can name this character when he is an actual character with his own history, his own story, his own lore, and that's our boy, you know what I'm saying? Like, once upon a time, I mean, he still serves as the quote-unquote link between game and player, but at the same time, he is still his own character. Like I said in one of my previous videos, I think one of the most fascinating things about this version of Link is that he has probably not the most lore per se, but definitely like a more unique take. This is a more unique take on Link, where he actually has a reason for why he's quiet. He's actually like a glutton, like he has a bit of a personality, you know what I'm saying? He could be a little, brazen's not the word I'm looking for. Is cocky the right? No, he's not cocky. I don't know. There's just a lot of different things about this Link. He has a lot of different sides to him that we've never seen from previous Links beforehand. While there were a lot of expressive Links in the past, I mean, the closest we ever got to a Link like this one, probably the most expressive Link would probably be Wind Waker, Toon Link. But these two, they're their own characters. They're two separate characters, you know what I'm saying? Toon Link is a King Vaughn of that Hyrule, you know what I'm saying? This Link don't operate like that. He's a lot more tactical and a better fighter. But yeah, that Toon Link was moving on a different type of time. But regardless, Link is his own character from now on, and I think they're going to play a lot more into that. We're probably going to get more history with every Link that we play. Every incarnation of him is probably going to have his own thing going on, even more so than before. Like, he'll probably have like a written history that we'll jump right into the middle of before we actually, take control of it. You know what I'm saying? And that's cool. I'm down. I'm down to be told a story with the character that I'm playing as. You know what I'm saying? I like that. I would love to see that happen. So I'm totally cool with that. Next to that, this one is very specific, but I think they're going to have a bigger emphasis on how teams work going forward, right? There was an interview, was it Aonuma or was it with somebody else? It was one of the directors for Age of Imprisonment, and they were basically saying that, no, I think it was a message from Aonuma, but he was saying basically that, when playing Age of Imprisonment, keep an eye out for a lot of the fresher mechanics and things like that, or some of the gameplay styles that we've implemented into it, because we do plan to take some of those ideas and implement them into future titles. So, just be aware when you're playing that game, which on one hand could definitely just be a lie, just be a way to be like, hey, if you want something to look forward to for the next Zelda, you might want to take a look in Age of Imprisonment, because it might have something for you that you didn't even know about, and you'll definitely want to have an eye on this, so when the next Zelda comes out, you'll know what's going on. So it could be some BS like that. I totally wouldn't put it past them or anything like that. But at the same time, I don't know, when it comes to the devs at Nintendo, they're definitely a lot more childlike and creative in that sense, in which, they have a more childlike sense of wonder, the older developers like Sakurai and stuff like that. So I wouldn't put it past them to actually mean something from that. What most people don't know is what the hell he's talking about. You know what I'm saying? And when it comes to Age of Imprisonment, the primary thing that comes to mind is how the team mechanics work, how those team-ups work, and how unique they are, right? There's so many different team-ups with so many different cast members available in the game that it's kind of hard to keep track. And a good majority of them are just like, they both just use their special and it hits a little bit harder, but there are some really unique team-ups with Zelda and most of the crew, the Construct and a good portion of the crew, not Kaufmo. Kaufmo? This is not the Amazing Digital Circus. What are we talking about? Little Plant Dude. Pro ZD's playing guy. And, just a bunch of other characters that have completely unique animations and team-ups and things like that for more powerful and more fun attacks, right? That's the most unique thing about it, because the only other thing that I could think of is how they utilize the different construct pieces and stuff like that, or like how they use the fuse ability on a bunch of different items for combos and things like that. It's like they would have said something like that for Tears of the Kingdom if that's what they meant. The only primary unique thing about Age of Imprisonment are those team-ups. So it's like that's the primary thing we can grab from right now. That's my best guess, So I have to imagine that means going forward we're probably going to have more emphasis on teams, right? Because we did spend a good majority of this era alone, right? Breath of the Wild, completely alone. Tears of the Kingdom, even when we had the ghostly versions of Link's friends with him, he was still mostly alone. You know what I'm saying? And then obviously they're not looking at the warriors. Well, I guess they are, but for the most part, I think we're gonna have a bigger emphasis on teams and team ups and team attacks and things like that. How they're gonna go about it, absolutely no idea. But I think we are gonna see a situation in which we might have somebody or something with us that's going to heavily implement and build on team attacks or team something going forward. Maybe we get new abilities per dungeon for this thing to utilize, so that when we go back out into the overworld, we're going it would kind of play out like an open world Metroidvania type situation, not like Metroid Prime 4, where you get a new ability and then you go back out into the overworld and there's a bunch of things that you could do now, and now you have this team up that you can use. So it's that would be cool. I don't know. That's just off the top of my head, but that would be neat, I think, if they could come up with something creative like that. I don't know. I'd be down for it. And then the last thing, and I'm sitting on the hill with this one, whether it be alone, whether it be with other people. But I do honestly believe that they are going to work with a more direct story this time around, right? It's going to be a little more straightforward, maybe not necessarily streamlined, we're probably going to have a way to get from, point A to point B, but, still have the freedom to do the story quests whenever we feel like it, but we're going to have a more direct storyline this time around for sure. And the primary reason I believe that is because it's hard to imagine another situation they can get away with doing the memory situation, because if they do this again, they'd just be milking it at that point, right? Because, one of the things that upset me when I heard it, and this makes me so mad, is that they said, oh yeah, no, we build the gameplay first, and then we build the story around it. It's okay, it's a good idea in theory. It is, don't get me wrong. But 9 times out of 10, for this era, the stories have suffered because of that. because the story always came last to them in a sense, right? And that was a massive problem, especially, and it showed a lot in like Tears of the Kingdom. It showed in Echoes of Wisdom, and you know, it kind of bled in by technicality, you know, kind of bled into the Warriors games as well, you know, because it's a byproduct of those like secondhand story ideas, you know what I'm saying? And it's just like, you know, not that the stories themselves are necessarily awful or horrid or anything like that, but because the story was an afterthought, it suffered a little bit in a couple of aspects. So I feel like it would be in their best interest to not do that again. Also, unless they're going with the post-apocalyptic situation again, there's no way, right? There's just no way we're gonna do another memory thing, right? There's no way. Like, maybe you could call it, so you could say I'm smoking on hopium, I don't care. It just makes more sense. It just makes more sense for them not to do that again. You know what I'm saying? Granted, I could be wrong. Maybe they find a super clever way to do it. Okay, whatever, I don't care. I mean, I'm still there for it. I'm just hoping that they do it correctly this time, right? I mean, in Breath of the Wild, it was clever and lucky, almost. You know what I'm saying? Like, it wasn't lucky. It was deliberate. It was still very, very clever. You know what I'm saying? And it worked that one time. It obviously did not work for the most part in Tears of the Kingdom, so I don't think they're gonna pull it like that again. At the very least, we'll probably have something closer to Breath of the Wild, but I have to imagine that they're probably not going to do a memory situation a third time around. It's redundant, and that would have to mean that they would have to probably copy a good couple of story beats from Era of the Wild, and like taking inspiration from it is totally fine, but you know, we've been doing this for too long now, brother. It's been almost a full decade. It's time to try something new, and I think, you know, utilizing a more linear structured story works better than you probably think it might in an open world format. But maybe that's just a me thing, I don't know. But either way, that's what I generally expect when it comes to the next mainline Zelda. When that's gonna come to us, I'm not counting on it for another like 2-3 years minimum, and that's, you know, that's counting whatever we get. I really don't know what they're gonna give us this year. I'd be surprised if we got anything at all, you know, but like, they gotta give us something for this 40th anniversary, for Christ's sake. So who knows, maybe they'll find a way to show out, because it is like going to be the first like official full entire year of Switch 2, and I have to imagine they're gonna find some way to show out. So that next direct is probably gonna hit like crack whenever that is, but we'll have to play it by ear, because hey, you know what, maybe that's just me. So that just about does it for this one. I'm passing the mic over in your direction, and I want you guys to tell me everything that you're thinking in the comment section below. Do you agree that my list here is generally what you can expect from the next mainline Zelda title? These things definitely make sense as mechanics, for story beats, for characters, or for whatever else, and we're probably looking forward to a much different, or a very different Zelda title than we've ever seen before. Or am I absolutely off my rocker? Nothing here makes sense, nothing here is even remotely guaranteed, and I need to cease operations indefinitely. Tell me everything that you guys are thinking in the comment section below, because you know for a fact that I'm always going to be down there with you guys. But with that, it does appear to be skedaddle o'clock, so I'm going to go ahead and do exactly that. I'd like to thank you guys ever so much for watching. I truly do hope you enjoyed. Do me the greatest favor of dropping a like and a comment, and consider subscribing for more content just like this here. And with that, I'm gonzo. Thanks again, hope you enjoyed, and I'll be seeing you guys in the next video. Do me the greatest favor of taking good ass care, and I'll see you all next time. Bye!
Doing donuts in a bin. I stay funky. Battle goes wherever I am. I stay funky. I don't know who's ready to spit. Just know you're going down with my 58 clips. I stay funky. Honey's taking back to the crib. I stay funky. Get the club popped off like pins. I stay funky. I don't know.